All right, so welcome everyone to the PMP exam preparation introductory session, right? So PMP stands for Project Management Professional. That's for your growth in terms of career. Once you develop the skills and understanding and knowledge, of course, that brings in more growth. So if you have any questions, any concerns, type in the chat and I will be able to answer you during our session or at the end, right? Either ways. So to start with, let's carry on our understanding. My name is Adnan Rafiq Ahmed. I am PMP certified, Lean Six Sigma Master Black Belt, ITIL certified, Balance Scorecard Professional, ISO 9001 Lead Auditor, ISO 22301, which is Business Continuity Lead Implementer. And I try to bring in experience from different areas in project management and, of course, multiple cases. So what is Project Management Professional? What is PMP? Do you understand? So how many of you are attending the PMP session for the first time? So you can use the chat and type in first time or have you attended before? So if it's your first time, type in first time. Right, so we have Amayas first time, Hamza first time, Theo first time, Betty first time. Okay, very good. So that's not a problem, all right? And most of the time, what happened is someone has to start from somewhere, right? So there was a time when I started project management for the first time as well. So that's where PMP has to start somewhere. Now you might have been already working in project management, maybe with PMO, Project Management Office, but haven't attended a proper session, right? Which is not a problem. Or even if you have not worked in project management before and this is the first time, still it's okay. Now let's carry on and understand how it works. So you need to understand also benefits in terms of project management or certified, and also the time that you have to invest. And again, yes, money is also part of it, but that's not a big deal, right? Major concern is the time because project management, I call it father of certifications because of the knowledge it holds. It has 10 knowledge areas, 5 process groups. We'll go and talk about those in more detail. So that's PMI, Project Management Institute, and PMI is in Pennsylvania, USA. That's actually the governing body of project management. They hold the trademark of PMP. None in the world can certify you as PMP unless if you take exam with PMI and they send you a certificate. So that's the power that PMI is a governed certificate. As I mentioned about my certificates, that's my visit to PMI. This was a couple of years ago. And BSc, I'm certified in information technology. I hold my certificate, bachelor's from New Mexico Institute of Mining and Technology from US. And of course, some experience in the field. So our topics are understanding project management, 10 knowledge areas, 5 process groups, introduction to some of the tools, all right, and techniques that we cover in project management. Know the flow, all right? Of course, we'll not go through in more detail, but I will guide you on how to understand more about the flow of project management. An exam preparation based on 2021 exam pattern. And again, what are your next steps and what you should do to become PMP certified within 3 months. So PMI holds many certificates. And of course, there is CAPM, which is Certified Associate in Project Management. So if you do not qualify to be PMP certified, you can go for CAPM. And there's a criteria. The criteria is, if you have bachelor's degree, you need about 36 months of, all right, so if you have bachelor's degree, you need about 36 months of project management experience. Now, even if you have operational experience, but you worked as team, it may count towards being project. So if you don't have 36 months of experience, which is about 3 years, you have less, you may not qualify and you have to wait until that time, or you can go for CAPM exam, especially if you have only 1 year of experience, right? And then if you don't have bachelor's degree, but you have some sort of diploma or high school degree or high school certificate, that means you need to have 5 years of experience in project management. And then you can also apply for PMP exam. Otherwise, you can go for CAPM. The training for both CAPM and PMP is same. The book is same, which is Project Management Body of Knowledge, 7th edition right now. So the training is same, book is same. The difference is about number of questions and of course the difficulty level. And of course, based on your experience, you can become certified appropriately. Now, PMP in 2021 has 180 questions that will be marked. And you have about 230 minutes compared to 2020 or earlier, where you have 200 questions and 240 minutes. All right, you also have a couple of breaks when you're taking online exam, but you have to be careful and understand well that how the online exam works, how you can take the break, and what are the criteria, because the camera will be on all the time, the mic will be on all the time. So you can take exam online facility, all right, or you can take exam at your home itself. So the way it works is that you should have a very good internet connection, laptop with the camera, and of course your mic has to be on all the time. Then PMI also offers PGMP Program Management Certificate, Portfolio Management Certificate, Risk Management, Schedule Management, and some other certificates as well. Currently, there are about 2.2 million people being PMP certified. And of course, number is growing. And PMP certificate is very much valuable certificate to a point that some jobs of project management require to be PMP certified. And in some organizations, especially government organizations, you cannot bid for a project if the project manager is not PMP certified. So you have to make sure that whoever is project manager in the organization should be PMP certified. That's where the PMP certificate holds a lot of value. Sometimes people ask me, should we go for the project management, masters in project management or PMP? So looking at the requirements from some organizations and the bids, of course, PMP is a better option. Maybe you can do masters in something else, but go for PMP certificate. All right, so moving on with this, let's talk about some fundamentals of project management. Now type in, let me know, are you ready? Are we going fine? Type in, let me know, are you ready? If you're ready, we'll go and talk about project management fundamentals and how you can be PMP certified. Betty said ready. John said ready. Theo said ready. Okay, very good. All right, so let's talk about some fundamentals of project management. See, why project management? First of all, what are the benefits? Why you want to be project management certified and why organizations want to have people who are PMP certified. As I said, project management is huge in terms of knowledge. It has about 10 knowledge areas. Knowledge area, you can think of different areas, all right? So the 10 knowledge areas are integration management, schedule management, scope management, cost management, quality management, communication management, risk management, procurement management, and so forth. Stakeholder management is one of the key knowledge areas as well. So you can think being a project manager, you have to have the strings attached and you have to control all of them at the same time. So you also have to manage communication, internal and external to the project, with your team and with the stakeholders and with your suppliers. You also have to take care of the schedule. You also have to take care of the cost. So your project should not go over budget and should not go, of course, it should not be delayed. And you cannot have your stakeholders being mad at you and also suppliers not providing services to you. So you have to be careful and you have to play a role where you are actually one and all. You're one-man army in the project management because success of the project relies on the project manager. So if a project fails, project manager is to be blamed. Now, individuals and groups, they need to understand that project management helps them to meet the business objectives, satisfy business objectives and criteria, meet the stakeholder expectations, be more predictable, understand well, put a proper strategy, put a proper plan together, understand the risk towards the project, optimize the use of organization resources, identify who to use, when to use, and how to use in terms of resources, equipment, and so forth. Manage the change in the project from day start and day end, right? Of course, no project will start and end the same way. There has to be changes and you have to manage changes as well. All right, so that's the key benefits of the project management. At the end of the day, you are going to complete projects successfully that is aligned with the organization strategy. If you don't have a project that is aligned with the organization strategy or the vision of the organization, the project should not be there in the first place. Do you understand the vision of the organization, right? Where we are going to be in 10 years or in 15 years or maybe 50 years. So any organization will put up a strategy to meet the vision of the organization, right? And any project, any initiative that comes along, it has to be aligned with the strategy. What kind of projects you can have? For example, launch a new product, or maybe upgrade a product, or maybe open a new branch, or maybe build a new tower. So there could be so many projects that you can initiate based on the strategy. If it aligns with the strategy, you go ahead. And sometimes what happened on the way, sometimes the project, the strategy will change. or a project specific initiative will not align with the strategy. So you can take it out. Yes, you can cancel a project. And that's what happens sometimes. There could be some other reasons that you run out of funds, all right, or you don't have a specific resource available. There's also reason that you have to cancel a project. Multiple reasons of project conclusion. But of course, being a project manager, your job is that project should be concluded in a proper way, in a successful way. So being project manager, you also have to play around with the triple constraints. Basically, there are 6, such as your scope, cost, schedule, your quality, your risks. Because let's say stakeholder comes to you and say, complete the project, let's say 2 months earlier. So you have to look for the trade-off. So if you want to complete project earlier, you may want to bring in more resources and pay more, but that will increase your cost of the project. But is it okay? And if it's not okay, then you may want to reduce the quality or maybe reduce the scope. So being a project manager, it's your job to look at, again, all the strengths and manage them in a good way. You are the one who's supposed to look at the trade-off for one constraint towards the other. All right, so the best project managers are the one who actually comply with and fulfill customer requirements without jeopardizing the constraints, without jeopardizing the objectives towards these knowledge areas. So let's look at what is a proper definition of a project. So definition of a project is anything that you start and it has an end date. So it's a temporary endeavor, temporary effort. It could be months, it could be years. And at the end, you give a unique result. That's basically is a project. So building a tower, building a bridge, building a new software, coming up with a new product, all these are example of your project. But let's say if you talk about operations. So what are operations? Anything which is repetitive is an operation. For example, when you talk about production line, so while you're producing a product, the first time you make it, it's a project. But once you start the production, that is actually you get into operations, right? Same goes with implementing an ERP is a project, but once it's implemented, then using it or running is actually part of operations. See, organizations actually have either projects or operations or both. So you have to make sure that where your major revenue is coming from. If it's coming from projects, most likely you are a projectized organization, and you should pay attention how to run projects successfully. Even if it's operational organization, you still have to think about, do you do some projects? And if you do, then how much value are there for the projects? Maybe you want to extend your knowledge towards project management. I highly recommend people to learn project management, be PMP certified, regardless of your job or organization, and learn about operations through ITIL. There's ITIL Foundation Certificate, become certified. It's about how to manage your service or operations in a better way. And then third certification or training that I highly recommend to develop skills are Lean Six Sigma, at least Green Belt, so that you know the problem solving methodology and how to improve the organization and the processes. All right, so we understand about the project. It's you start and you end, deliver a unique result. That's basically definition of the project. And of course, it should be aligned with the strategy, which is aligned with the objective or vision of the organization. Now, why you do project? Because you want to drive change. You are in one state right now and you want to reach to a different state. So you need to make sure that to move from one state to the other state, you have to actually go with an initiative. Just like maybe through implementing ERP, or maybe through producing or introducing a new project or new product. So that's where your organization business value will improve over time when you are actually starting new initiatives or projects. You complete them successfully means success to your organization, means growth to your organization. All right, so when you talk about definition of projects, you know where or how things are happening. So in project management, there are 49 logically grouped processes, all right? So a process means you have an input, you go and do some activities on it, and then you get an output, right? So in project management, that's basically where we understand the 49 process groups, and they're all based on these five process groups, all right? So you have these 49 processes. The process group mean, earlier they used to be called phases, but think about if you are going to start a project, you have to initiate, you have to start somewhere, you have to plan for it, then you have to execute it, then you have to control and monitor, then you have to close. So basically, if you think about 5 phases in a project, right? but that was the old terminology, or in the beginning, that's what project management used to call them. Five process groups were kind of like phases. But then, of course, terminology changed and the concept changed as well. So these five are process groups and not phases anymore. Now, let's be clear about this. When we say phases, that means from start to end, you break down your project in multiple elements. All right, those multiple elements are called phases, such as when you are going to construct a building. So one of the phase could be feasibility study, and then maybe excavation. You dig the ground and so forth, right? Put up the base. Then you make the gray structure. So that's the structure. Then interior of the building, then exterior of the building. So these are the five phases. You may have 6 phases or 7 phases to a project, maybe 3. 5 to 7 is a good number, by the way. So when you have these phases, when you're going to do a feasibility study, you have to apply the process group to them, such as for feasibility, you have to initiate, you have to plan for feasibility study, you have to execute it, whatever the activities are, then you have to control, because your feasibility cannot just carry on forever, right? So you have to plan, you have to execute, then you have to control, and finally you have to close the feasibility study. You have to close the phase, so you have a major deliverable of the phase, and that deliverable has to be accepted by the stakeholder. This is called phase close or phase exit criteria. Once you get the sign off from the stakeholder, then you move on to phase number 2. So you start excavation. Again, for the excavation, you have to initiate, you have to plan, you have to execute, you have to monitor and control, and then you have to close. So for every phase, you have to apply the process group. Now, within these process groups, you have these 49 processes, but you don't have to apply all the 49 processes on all phases. Example is, I was working on one of the project. It was one of the government organization, and we asked our stakeholder that, what about the funds? And you know what he said? Hey, don't worry about it. So we didn't have to run all the 3 processes in cost management. Like we didn't have to plan cost, estimate cost, and determine budget, because it was an open budget project, kind of, right? We're talking about good old days, about like 15 years ago. So, but our main concern, yes, the constraint was time in that project, that we have to complete within the specific time. So it was more important than the budget itself. So sometimes you don't have to run some processes, like if you don't have anything to procure, you don't have to run the procurement processes. So that way you don't apply all the 49 processes in all projects. You apply whatever is applicable. Okay, so we'll talk about phases and of course the process groups as well, but I want to make sure that you understand that well. So basically what happened is, in a project, you have the life cycle of a project. You start and you end, and you break it down into multiple steps. And those steps, high-level steps, are called phases, right? And then those phases, you apply again the process groups and specific processes to make sure that you complete the work in each phase. Is this clear so far? Please let me know. Are we good? Everybody said yes. Response said clear, right? Yes, I want to make sure that we're all together in this, right? So understand what's happening. Theo said yes. Okay, very good. So let's carry on. And this is an example. You can see the picture, which shows that you start a phase, and that's actually about the process groups. So you start initiating a process, you go to the planning processes, execution processes, and monitoring and closing is happening all together. And then finally, you're going to close the project. Okay, so that's how the processes link together. And you already understand the 5 process groups. You have initiating process group, planning, execution, monitoring and control, and finally closing. All right, let's talk about some example. When you initiate a project, and let's think about the flow of the processes. Of course, in 1 hour, we cannot go through all 49 processes, but I want to use an example so that you understand what is happening. What is the first process you do when you start a project? So the process name is called Develop Project Charter. It's a written document which is talking about high-level information of the stakeholder requirements. Why are you doing a project? Is it to build an application? Is it to build a tower? And so forth. So in that one, also you talk about some high-level risk and some basic information. And it's supposed to be signed by your key stakeholders, especially sponsor, right? And the project manager himself. All right, so once you initiate, and then what you do? So once you sign the project charter, then you identify the stakeholder, right? And by the way, flow is not happening in a proper knowledge area perspective. All right, so here we have some technical difficulty there. We have a key stakeholder with us. All right, we are doing a session, so just hold on, gentlemen. Give me a minute, all right? I have to explain well what I'm doing. Screen sharing is not there, all right? Yes, all right. Sorry for the disruption, right? Risk management, that's how things happen, right? Okay, in project management, you have to do that. You have to manage all stakeholders. Let me share my screen again. All right, so yeah, that could have been a quick break, right? All right, so yes, Betty, thank you. All right, so moving on, we talk about the example. So now what happens is when you start the project, the first thing you do is you start with writing a project charter, right? So after you write down the project charter, it's signed, means it's authorized, you have resources you can use, you have budget allowed, and so forth. Now, the second thing is, and this process of develop project charter is in the knowledge area of integration management. Now, you move on to a different knowledge area, which is stakeholder management. And that's where you have a process called identify stakeholders. You have to go and identify who are the stakeholders. Through interview, through looking at the document, the first person you know right away is the one who signed on your project charter. So that's your key stakeholder. You can interview him or her to identify more people. Or maybe names are mentioned in the project charter, such as accountant will be Mr. So-and-so. So that means that Mr. So-and-so is also your key stakeholder, right? And quality assurance will be Miss XYZ, and that now is your another stakeholder. So look at this, interview other stakeholders, try to identify where the requirements are coming from, and you know your key stakeholders. So after that, you go into planning, right? That completes your initiation phase. It has only, or initiation process group, it has only two processes, develop project charter and identify stakeholder. Now, once you get into planning, there are so many processes that you have. Right away, there are 10 processes which are based on each knowledge area. For example, you have to have scope plan, how the scope processes will carry on, what activities you do in to identify scope, create scope, and then to control scope. And then you have cost planning, you have schedule planning, you have quality plan, you have communication plan, you have procurement plan, stakeholder management plan, and so forth. So right away, you have 10 processes in planning, plus you have other processes as well, such as once you prepare some of the plans, you can start working on collect requirements, define scope, estimate your cost, estimate duration, determine budget, develop your schedule, identify risk, do qualitative analysis, do quantitative analysis, come up with the risk response. And then that's how the planning will work. All these processes are in planning. Of course, once you do a proper detailed PMP exam preparation training, you should know all these processes. You should know what each process is doing and where it falls. Now, it may seem a difficult task because that's so much knowledge, right? But don't worry about it. Pay attention to the names. And that's how I've been telling my candidates since like what, 10 years now? It's easy if you pay attention to names. So let me ask you this. There is a process called control risk. It's part of which knowledge area? Type in control risk, part of which knowledge area? So based on the name, you should know what is happening. Control cost is part of which knowledge area? All right, I'm talking about the name of the knowledge area. Remember, there are 10 knowledge areas. There is integration, scope, time, cost, quality, HR, risk management, stakeholder management. So out of these knowledge areas, what is the process? What is the knowledge area? So let me help you out here because you haven't seen the slide about knowledge area. So I shouldn't ask you this maybe. So it's about risk management. And now if I ask you, it's part of which process group, right? So control risk is in risk management, and which process group? Out of the 5, there are 5 process groups, right? Initiation, planning, execution, monitoring and control, and closing. It's part of Monitoring and control, exactly, right, Betty? Thank you. Yes, because look at the name, right? So just like this one, if we talk about plan procurement is which process group? Plan procurement in planning, right? In planning. And then which knowledge area? It's in procurement management, right? So if you pay attention to names, you get understanding of the input, output of tools and techniques and so forth. So just about this one, the first process you implement is develop project charter. What is the output of this process? You know, the process of develop project charter, look at the name, is to develop the charter, develop this document, which is telling us what is the project. So the output from this is project charter itself. Identify stakeholder. The process is to identify stakeholders, and the output is list of stakeholders, who they are. It's called stakeholder register. Now, there's a process called identify risk. What do you think is the output of identify risk process? Yeah, what do you think is the output of identify risk process? Yes, exactly. In risk management, and the output is called a risk register. It's a list of risks that you identified, which you go analyze later on, and then you come up with risk response, and then you have to control the risk throughout the project, right? So that's a quick idea and understanding of the processes. We already understand the flow, right, of process groups versus phases. So you have multiple phases. You can have anything from 3 to 7 phases in a project. That's a good number. You may have more, but of course it become too heavy to handle, right? Too much to handle. And then for each phase, you apply the process groups, right? Every phase that you have to actually initiate, you have to plan, you have to execute, you have to monitor and control, and you have to close. Okay. All right. So yes, these are the list of 10 knowledge areas. By the way, let us know, send us your message, and we can send you the presentation if you want. All right. So reach us through, you'll find out our email as well and WhatsApp number. And if you've already registered with us and we see that you're attending, we'll be sending you an email with the presentation slides, right? So you have integration management, which is integrating all the activities together, integrating all the other knowledge areas and the process groups together, right? So that's integration management. As a chapter, it's integration management. As a person in the project, it's the project manager's job to integrate all elements of the project together. Then you have scope management, which is the boundary of the project. What is the boundary? What are we working on? We should not go beyond, all right? Then schedule management, cost management, quality, which is basically requirements of the customer. Make sure you don't miss anything and customers are satisfied. Resource management, that doesn't mean only manpower, but also your resources such as other equipment, your tools, and of course your material and so forth. You have communication management. Of course, project managers should spend something about like 85 to 90% of the time in communication, internally and externally. If you have weak communication skills, being a project manager, I highly recommend to go and look into it, right? Assess yourself and learn effective communication skills, because that's a core skill a project manager should have, along with, of course, risk management, decision making, and so forth. So you have risk management, procurement management, and stakeholder management as other knowledge areas. Now let's talk about what is happening in 2021. All right. So our last session that we conducted was somewhere in November, as I remember, in 2020, because of the not confirming on the new technique and the new style of the exam and how it will work, and of course being the version of the book changing. So right now, PM book 7th edition is applicable. All the 49 processes are applicable. So training is still the same. It's just that your exam pattern has changed. So their focus, instead of being on 5 process groups, is now on people. That how much you emphasize on people, how much you effectively lead the team in today's environment. And then the processes, as you already understand, there are 49 processes. You should understand them and how they are working. If you pay attention to the names, process management is not a problem. You should know them all. And then business environment, which is highlighting the connection between the projects and your business environment. Of course, you need to know your organization. You need to know your organization strategy. As I said, Your project is there because of the strategy which is aligned with the vision. If it's not aligned, it should be out of your organization. So now the other key change in project management happened from 6th edition or 5th edition to 6th edition, which is still carrying on in 7th edition, and the future edition is that project management is not only going to be working towards consecutive or waterfall style. So you're not doing project phases in consecutive motion, right? You are doing them in parallel as well. So you're working on one phase, you may also start working on the other phase as well, and so forth. But again, you can work in agile motion. You can do them again and again. You may do multiple revision in one phase, so you can complete that one and move on to the next also. So it's again, we have predictive style called waterfall, or consecutive style of execution of phases, and agile, which is in parallel or repetition of the phases itself, again, multiple times. And then hybrid, where you are applying predictive and agile method together. Now, the way that I remember is predictive, it has V in the end. So I think about this as a waterfall, which is the water is falling, all right? So that's how waterfall, it's one phase, and the other phase, then the third phase. So that's predictive style, consecutive style, or waterfall. And then agile, I look at small a as an O, right? So you go into a loop of completing this phase, multiple loops, and then you complete this phase, you move on to the next one. So A as an agile, right, or loops. And then hybrid again is combination of both. So you need to gain a competitive edge, prove your work smarter, make your goals a reality, and of course, earn your PMP certification as soon as possible. Of course, it's highly recommended certification all over the world. It gives a very good boost to your pay scale as well. In US, if you are PMP certified, you get 25% more salary than not being PMP certified. And actually, it's benefit in many other countries as well. As I said, some jobs require you to be PMP certified. And of course, in some cases, you cannot even bid if you don't have a PMP certified project manager. So it's very important. You need to do that. Now, your exam pattern changed. Earlier, it was only multiple choice questions, but now you have some other type of questions as well. So you have fill in the blanks. You have just like what you see as drag and match. So you have to match the options that you have, right? Two tables. You also get something which we call hotspot. So they're giving you a graphical image, and you have to pick whatever the concern they're talking about. Like here, you have to pick where the cost will increase the most. Again, a hotspot where you look at a table and you have to get to know or write in the information. So you also have fill in the blanks. Sometimes you have explanatory questions. You have to explain or write it. Descriptive questions, right? Again, you don't have to write the whole paragraph, but as much as it answers the question. So you have mix and match of those kind of questions. There's no specific number on what kind of questions you will get. But of course, your difficulty level will remain the same almost for everyone. It's just that if you know the information, if you are learned, if you have the knowledge, and your recall speed is fast, that means you are good to complete your exam on time. Now, my golden rule of thumb is 1 question per minute. Once you do the mock exam and practice questions, this is basically what we do in our preparation strategy. If you don't complete 1 question per minute, that means you're not ready for the exam. Let's talk about next steps or PMP exam strategy. So you should attend the PMP training. Now, some people say, can we go and read book? Yes, you can. But in my experience, I never have any attendee, I'm talking about out of maybe 5,000 plus attendees, who read the book before they attend the training. Because you start reading the book and you get bored. So once you attend the training, you know terminology. When you're reading a book, you know what you're reading. You understand what you're reading. So that's why training is the first step. And it's kind of like a forced step because you pay for training and you have to attend it. So this is one of the best steps and one of the highly recommended one. I'll take questions in a few minutes. So second, you read the PMP exam preparation book. There are multiple books. What I recommend is by Rita Mutahi. Practice questions. Of course, we provide you with the practice questions as well. And then go through the PM book 7th edition. You have to skim through it, right? So you don't have to really read it in detail because now your speed should be fast. You already know the concepts. You're just simply going through and like, yeah, I know this, right? Move on. Yeah, I know this, move on. So this is how the PM book skim through should happen. Then you have to do mock exams, all right? 200 questions, or now in case 180 questions. You sit in one go, try to complete them, and be in exam preparation or exam taking mode. So in mock exams, you have to share with me your time and your percentage. Based on that one, we can agree on you're ready for the exam or no. And then, of course, you pick a date and go take your PMP certification exam, become PMP certified. Well, I could have shared one of the screenshot. One of my attendee just passed PMP exam last week, right? All right, so next step is you should take the PMP training. This is what I highly recommend, unless if you think otherwise and you want to go read the book, that's fine. I call PMP father of certifications. It's very, very important, very high in terms of knowledge. And again, some people, they, if you ask me what is my ratio of people becoming certified, it's, I would say it's 50%. 50% of those who attend my training, they take the exam. But what is the success rate of people who pass? So far as I know, it's 100%. Those who've taken exam, they have passed, right? So PMP exam preparation training is giving you 35 PDUs. That's a requirement. Apart from being certified, having a bachelor's degree and 3 years of experience, you have to have 35 hours of training. PDU stand for professional development units. So 35 hours of training gives you these PDUs. Our training is about 30 hours, and then we add the mock exam and the coaching session afterwards, which actually goes above 40 PDUs, but we get certificate for only 35 PDUs. All right, so the date. Now, our strategy from now on until end of this year is that every third Sunday, we'll be starting a PMP session. So for the batches, all right, if you want to join, it will be instructor-led recorded sessions, which means we'll be releasing the day one lecture. You go through that one, and we have a session where we all meet up for about 1 hour, go through the question answers, your concerns, and agree on next steps and so forth. So there'll be meeting every day for 10 days. It's 2-week program. And then we are starting on every third Sunday. Again, the time we can agree and discuss, and we can share that information with you. If you're interested, do let us know that you want to be part of the PMP exam session starting up next, and more details as well. Thank you very much for joining the session. Now I will take up my questions, all right? All right, so yes, I'll stop the screen if you have any questions.